A game lasts way too long when it's moved off the television screens, and even then, you're still trying to pay attention. But that's exactly what happened after an hour rain delay and bunch of commercials that probably were not needed out in the swamp as Texas A&M secures their second win of the season underneath Mike Elko 33-20. What's going on, SEC Unfiltered? This is the SEC Unfiltered postgame show. He's Dave Shumate. I'm Cole Thompson. Breaking down everything that we saw at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium as the Aggies advance. Going now 1-0 in conference play. The Mike Elko era seems to be prominent. And more importantly, there may be a quarterback conversation and controversy going on between two top signal callers. Make sure that you hit the like and the ring notification down below. This is your number one source for all things SEC coverage moving forward. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Make sure that also you're following us on the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're going to be live breaking down everything that you want to see from every avenue, so make sure you go follow us. Follow Dave on Twitter at Mock10Sports, me on Twitter at Mr. Cole Thompson, and make sure you check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. This postgame show is brought to you by GameTime. Use the GameTime app and use the code SECU for $20 off your very next purchase. Home game next week at Texas A&M. Kyle Field going to be rocking and rolling Aggies. Make sure that you go ahead and download the GameTime app. Use the promo code SECU, $20 straight off us. Dave, we knew what this game was going to be probably after we saw that second touchdown. But more importantly, it was the pregame that I thought really caught my attention. All week we had heard Connor Wigman. We had heard about his status. We heard that the shoulder was not fully go. And when we heard last night that there was a conversation that potentially he was going to go, but it ended up being Marcel Reed. And my first takeaway, probably my biggest takeaway, I like Connor Wigman a lot. But Marcel Reed fits this offense so much better for what they want to do with Colin Klein. And you saw that with the performance that we're going to be talking about for a very long time, especially going into conference play in a few weeks, especially when you got to go play against a team like Arkansas and Arlington.
No, I totally agree. You're right. After about the second score, you kind of felt over. But you're right. Marcel Reed, I feel like, has to be kind of the story of this. I thought Le'Veon Moss did a phenomenal job. And the Aggie offensive line, the Maroon Goons, the streak's over. The road game streak, conference streak is over. That's a massive win for Mike Elko. Yes, it wasn't pretty, but you're right. You may have something here with Marcel Reed when it comes to fitting into what Colin Klein wants to do. 100%. Because some of those throws, especially like the first, second drives where they went up 10-0, he made some throws, moved within the pocket, got outside the pocket, looked a little comfortable, that you feel like some of those A-gap blitzes Florida was coming with, Wigman probably takes a sack there. I mean, I saw Jesse Palmer, I think, was saying that was A&M's like first 3rd and 7 or more third down conversion or something of the season through 2 games. It's only 2 games. It's still not good. But you're right. It was just zone read after zone read. I think some of that's Florida's coaching ability a little bit. Like, just couldn't adjust. But you're right. I think this fits this as of this moment. I think you got to ride it, right? I mean, boy, it wouldn't really matter. I know I hate when people lose their jobs over injuries, but I mean, we've seen it in the past with Drew Bledsoe, Tom Brady. It just works out for somebody. And obviously, probably not the same situation here, but sometimes you just lose the job, and it is what it is. I don't know how you could go another route now. Again, there were some things they got to shore up, but again, I think from, like you said, just the fit. I mean, Connor Klein's always had running quarterbacks. Skylar Thompson, Will Howard, and Colin Klein himself was a running quarterback.
Yeah.
Finished third. They're talking about today. Finished 3rd in the Heisman race. So I'm with you. I think the Nashville native did enough to keep this job. They just need to keep building off this to play within Marcel's strengths. But I think right now you got to go with it.
Last year you saw him in the Texas Bowl, comes on in for Jalen Henderson, throws for 374 yards, has a good rushing touchdown, scores a touchdown through the air. Today, very much a similar path to victory. You go watch him, 11-17, 2 touchdowns through the air. Also finished with 83 yards on the ground, 6.4 yards per run. He picked up 6 first downs with his legs. The guy just fits a certain brand of football that is going to make this offense more aggressive. And now we have to have the serious conversation about where do you go if you are Texas A&M. The good news is you still have a week before you have to worry about Arkansas. You come home, you play Bowling Green. That's going to be a game that I think that you look at and say, okay, maybe we play both, play the hot hand afterwards. But I look at this team And it just felt like there was more connectivity with this offense. It just felt like it was more comfortability with number 10 versus number 15. It also just feels like that they had a much more cohesive game plan. He felt very much like he was able to go ahead and attack the middle of the field. And again, there has to be a reason why you end up benching Connor Wigman. Right now, an injury isn't enough for me. But what I will say is, if you start to see struggles against Bowling Green, if you start to see struggles, if you do elect to start him in Arlington, you know that you feel really good about your backup contingency plan to Marcel Reed. And again, maybe this is also when we're talking about what's going on with Florida, the problems that reside internally with that program might have opened up an avenue where even Jalen Henderson, if he would have played, would have looked phenomenal against this Gators defense. We don't know. But what I do know is what I've seen from this offense today. There's so much more familiarity about what Colin Klein likes to do, how he likes to utilize the tight ends, how he likes to go ahead and run the RPO, how he likes to have the quick reaction time. And Reed has that. And let's just go ahead and pull a spade a spade. As good as Connor Wigman is, he was the number 1 quarterback coming out of Bridgeland High School in Cyprus. This isn't a knock at all on Marcel Reed. He has been a proven winner. When he was at Montgomery Ball High School, he led his team to multiple titles. He had every accolade at his level. He was such a dynamic playmaker. He set records for the program out in Nashville. So this is not a kid that it just is coming on in and fits an offense better. This is a proven winner that has shown you with his time in high school, he can be a difference maker. And I think that you saw that today was consistency, clean strikes. Not every throw was perfect, but you didn't really need it. What you needed is when the moment arise, you had it. You had the big strike downfield to Cyrus Allen after the the Elijah Badger touchdown. You were able to capitalize. I'm glad that you brought up the Le'Veon Moss. Again, so many people want to go ahead and type out Ruben Owens done for the year. We're going to see this anemic running style. And people forgot that last year, Le'Veon Moss was a damn good running back for Texas A&M. He supplanted the starting role for Mamari Daniels, and he showed you in Bobby Petrino's style of offense, I can be a difference maker. He was the difference maker, in my opinion, on multiple drives today, especially when he goes ahead and have fun.
No, I 100% agree with that. And you're right. At some point, Marcel Reed was committed to Ole Miss too. Lane Kiffin would have been. So you're right. There's ability over there. I'm impressed with the Maroon Goons. I think that's kind of where it starts as well. I think Coach Cushing and them did a good job preparing. You had TJ Shanahan, Armaj Adams Reed or Reed Adams did a phenomenal job. I mean, they rushed for, we were just reading it. I mean, they ran for 310 yards, average 5.6 yards a carry, 37 minutes and 37 seconds of possession. And I think they probably had Cole an extra, when I was tracking it, and I probably lost four plays. I think they had 20 extra plays, more than Florida did, just from the time of possession. Florida, I think, towards the end of the first half, had like 12 total plays.
I believe that. I think you're right on that one.
It was something like that, something unbelievable where you're just like, good gracious, like Florida, you had the football. Yeah, when I was tracking, it was 69-54. And I think it ended up even being worse. But you're right. I mean, so you think Wigman should start next week against Bowling Green?
I'm not saying that he should. What I'm saying is that now you have to have a serious conversation. Now, again, if you feel like that Wigman is going to give you the best chance to win in the SEC, and it was one bad game against Arkansas, against Notre Dame, one bad game against Notre Dame, then you can go ahead and say that this is the guy. I also believe that when you're talking about Connor Wigman, he's a talented quarterback. Yeah. People will always love to go ahead and pinpoint you. I think that you know what you're saying when you don't. Let me make this clear to every A&M fan out there. And by the way, I am very sorry that I picked against A&M. That was my mistake. Thought it was going to be a better performance. I was wrong. But anyway, just because I believe that Connor Wigman is going to be a good quarterback doesn't mean he is going to be a good quarterback for the style of offense that they want to run with Colin Klein. Two things can be true. I honestly think that when you look at Connor Wigman, if he goes to another program that allows him to be a pocket passing quarterback, not mobile, stay behind the line of scrimmage, he's going to ball out. I also think that when you look at the style of quarterback that really does work for this team, it is Marcel Reed. But right now, until given further notice, Connor is the starter. Connor's going to be the starter. Now, if that ends up being a problem next week against Bowling Green, if that ends up being a problem against Arkansas, and you got to turn to Marcel Reed, you got to. But I will say that no matter what, today you leave this game feeling confident that if Connor is not the option, you have a guy that you can trust in number 10.
I do feel like Marcel Reed could be a kid that defenses could easily, because again, all you kept seeing today was zone read over and over again. And you're kind of wondering, what Ron Roberts and Austin Armstrong are kind of doing at some point. It's got to be. I mean, come on. I think basic high school defense is going to eventually stop that. But so I think there are some holes a little bit in Marcel's game. I don't think A&M goes and wins 10 games. I think with Marcel Reed's the whole starting of the season. I think he's kind of got some holes in his game as well. This will be the interesting topic of the week, honestly. Going in. I know they're Bowling Green. But again, to be fair to Bowling Green, they took Penn State to the wire 2 weeks ago. So it's not a game you just want to sleep on after getting comfortable, fat and happy after a big game, a big win. First time anyone on that roster has won an SEC road game, except maybe a transfer to come on from another SEC school. But at A&M, it's the first time you've won an SEC road game. So they're going to have to take that game serious. I mean, they're not, again, can't just roll the balls out. But this will be an interesting point of conversation throughout the rest of the week. And like you said, if it is Wigman, what's the leash? Like, how short of the leash is it? We may not even find out against Bowling Green. It may take until the Arkansas game.
You may see both of them play, and you may still feel confident if you send out number 15 and then you send out number 10 and both play really well, and you decide, let's go with the guy who we have had faith in throughout the entire offseason to be our number one against Arkansas. And if he throws a pick and it ends up being a close game, you go back to your play. The good thing is right now, Marcel Reed did not look like he was making his first career start in a regular season game. Marcel Reed did not look like he was uncomfortable in the style of offense that they want to run underneath Colin Klein. Marcel Reed looked poised, very much confident, being able to deliver strike after strike. His decision-making was pristine. I liked how he fit this.
It was an efficient performance. Yeah.
His overall performance was really good. Here's another performance that was really good. This secondary being able to capitalize on turnovers. 3 interceptions on the day. Bryce Anderson with a 45-yard touchdown return. Javon Thomas, Marcus Ratcliffe. They all were able to just corral Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway into making mistakes. And there were multiple times where you watched, there was optimism on the drive. There was consistency. You were starting to get a little bit of that inertia from Florida. And it wasn't like the game was ever going to be out of control. I think by going into halftime, you felt pretty confident with that substantial lead by Texas A&M 20-0 that you were going to walk away with the dub. But there was moments where it did feel like momentum was going to start shifting. Maybe you'll see the capitalization. Boom, interception. Boom, interception. Boom, pick six. That is what you like to see from a defense led by Mike Elko. And that's a big reason why, again, the anchor of this team underneath the Jimbo Fisher era was Mike Elko. You watched as this team took a step back after Elko left for Durham, North Carolina. Now he's back in the building, and that defense still is playing at an outstanding level, even though there are some questions overall.
No, 100%. I mean, this game was one up front. I mean, this was you factor in the rain. This is a true kind of, I know the point total won't show it, but this game was literally one of the trenches.
It was one of the trenches.
On both sides of the line of scrimmage, A&M, their defensive front whipped up on Florida, and their offensive front whipped up on Florida's defensive line. That's why I ultimately picked this guy. I was like, the major matchup in this, and you saw A&M scheme it up as the right side of that Florida offensive line. But I think the bigger surprise was, I mean, I think anybody who's telling you this, or if they thought A&M's offensive line was going to go rush for over 300 yards, they'd be lying to you. I thought they could have some success. I didn't see that just over and over, zone read after zone read. Like, that was impressive by the Maroon Goons and Coach Cushing and them. So you got to give tip of the cap from that. But yeah, A&M, impressive. You probably wish something they probably could work on a little bit, probably closing. Kind of felt like they lingered, it kind of lingered. And again, it's a weird game. Whenever you get delays in college football, that just messes up everybody. And again, that was in the first half. They had a halftime afterwards. But it kind of felt like if you were an A&M fan, you were like, when you missed the field goal to give Florida the ball with 13 minutes left before the interception by Thomas, you're like, my God, dude, they're a touchdown away and an onside kick from this is real. And like, we dominated this game. So probably just closing it. And you probably wish Bond was a little better. Missed 2 kicks today. He's usually better than that. But no, I mean, other than that, just closing. But again, you're going to take it similar to LSU. You needed a win. You got the monkey off your back. First SEC road win since 2021 against Missouri. So yeah, give the Aggies credit.
Just think about this for a second, Dave. You were in comparisons and right in the same company as Temple, Akron, and Kent State for most consecutive road losses. That's not good company to be in if you're Texas A&M. And that's not regardless of who you play. It could be a 5-7 season. It could be a 6-6 season. It could be an 11-1 season and your 1 loss is on the road. It's bad company to be in simply because you know what those teams are and what you're supposed to be. I'll be completely transparent. My entire emphasis on believing that Florida had a shot in this game had nothing to do at all with the offense, whether it was Connor Wigman, whether it was Marcel Reed. I did not care who was the quarterback. I was more so emphasizing that run defense. It was very much unimpressive and uninspiring against McNeese. It was uninspiring against Notre Dame. They held him to 2.1 yards per play, 52 yards on 25 carries. Yes, the Jacoby Jackson touchdown is going to count, but nobody finished with over 40 yards. To me,
here's a good stat. I saw someone tweeted this. You'll like this one in regard to what you just said. This was with about like 9 minutes left in the game, I think.
Yeah.
It said Gators had 22 rushing yards against Jay Bateman's defense, who was a coach on Florida's staff the last 2 years and wanted to call plays. It says Florida's defense on its third down defensive play caller in 3 seasons has given up 445 yards, 266 yards rushing, and 24 first downs. Yeah, this was 9:35 left in the game.
That's the point. And then also, I think that you look at Nick Scorton, he's feeling more comfortable. Cassius Howell, I know that somebody mentioned him in the comments earlier. He played phenomenal today.
Yeah.
That's a great another guy that you add into your system. It just kind of feels like for me with Texas A&M, everyone that we had talked about being the transfers, it took a little bit longer than expected to really gel. But today was one of those days where you look back and you're sitting at 8-4, 9-3, maybe even 10-2, but just on the outside looking in for the playoff. You look back at that Notre Dame game and say, if we would have had this game maybe at the mid-season point, what would the outcome be? That's the way I feel because of everyone just seemed to gel today. Everything that you want to see. And by the way, yes, the final score will tell you that this thing was close. It wasn't. Go back and look at the first quarter stats. 8 total yards of offense for Florida. That's the only thing I need to see to know that this game was completely put out of reach the second that you got into the end zone the very first time. So that's what you're looking at right now. The other thing that we got to look at right now, Dave, is the future of Florida football. And we have to talk about it. We have to. I have been a proponent for a while, believing that Billy Napier, going into year 3, knowing what the schedule was, did not need to be an 8-4, a 7-5. If they would have gone 5-7, but they would have shown in the wins that they were turning the corner. It was a more aggressive front. They had consistency. They were a unit that played cohesive football. They weren't making the mental mistakes. You were seeing progress. That would be enough to save them because you had DJ Lagway. And then came the Miami game. And by the end of the second quarter, you saw the life sucked out of that crowd. You saw immediately how quickly people were just done with the season. Ready to go wave the white flag. We're calling it a day. And then by halftime in this game, Billy was booed off the field. On top of that, during the middle of the commercial halftime break, they showed a Don't Drink and Drive ad where Billy Napier's in it. And fans booed the Megatron. They booed the Jumbotron because he was out there. They started drinking because they realized this is the life that we live in. Billy Napier is now 12-16 as a head coach in 2+ years at Florida. In his time with the Gators, Dan Mullen lost 15 games, went to 3 New Year's Six Bowls, and was nearly a college football playoff team. There's no coming back from this. It doesn't mean that it has to end now. It doesn't mean that it can't be corrected by next week. Doesn't mean that you can't make things interesting when you play UCF. Doesn't mean that you can't pull off an upset here or there. But the writing is on the wall. It's a culture thing at this point. They're not getting better. You're not seeing that progress. You're not seeing what a third-year team is supposed to look like. If you lost this game and you were Mike Elko, and let's say it was by a game-winning field goal by Florida, nobody's going to bat an eye. It's year 1. You're establishing yourself as a culture. You're defining your program. It's year 3, and I just feel like it's stuck in neutral, and it's not getting better, and it's not going to get better. And you can try and sell yourself. The fans are done. The fans are fed up. But I think that most people also are trying to find reasons to give hope and maybe a little bit of optimism. There isn't any. There's none.
No, there's people tweeting. I saw people tweeting like, "Man, don't let this game get close." Like, people are like, "Just bury us."
Bury us. No, that's the thing. That's when you know that you have lost the entire fan base. When you have fans saying, "Do not let Billy come close to making this thing interesting," because if he makes this interesting, they're going to sell it. And I'm going to be completely honest. It starts with Scott Strickland. It starts with the head. You got to go clean house. If you're going to make this move and you're going to move off of Billy Napier, you also have to move off Scott Strickland. Because the last thing you can do is allow him to make another hire and then potentially he's fired and now you're stuck with a guy that Scott brought in. It starts at the very top. And until you get a new athletic director in there that's going to make change. And let's be real, Florida right now is not viewed as a football program. It's viewed as a program with a football team, but it's not viewed the way that we view Alabama. It's not viewed the way we view LSU. The standards that are set in Georgia, the standards that are currently set at Texas A&M with Mike Elko. Like, Mark Stoops was not good enough for the job, and Billy and company made sure that he never left Lexington. They made sure that happened because there's a standard about college football and College Station. It just doesn't feel like there's that standard right now. And so Scott Strickland having the opportunity to make a third hire automatically makes it seem like we're just stuck in the same rut. And it's not going to get any better.
I looked into the Scott Strickland thing this week randomly enough. We hadn't brought it up on the show. But someone who's around Florida did tell me that the administration doesn't blame Strickland because the admin wanted Napier so bad. So they're like, it's not as done. They're like, I'm not saying Strickland's safe. They're like, it's just not as – even I thought it was like, yeah, there's no way it's a third coaching hire. But just because you brought it up and we needed to talk about it, someone did mention they're like, the admin kind of doesn't – people internally don't hold that hire against him because it really wasn't a Scott Strickland hire. Who knows? We'll see. But, yeah, I mean, it's a Billy – It just feels like it's the same thing. Even going back to I was kind of done with them with the preparation when they opened up at Utah last year, and you just had like 18 penalties. You look unprepared. I mean, these two games to open up the season that against teams who had a pulse against Miami and A&M, you just look unprepared, and it's embarrassing at home. You lost two games you were really never in it from right off the jump. Right off the bat, you weren't in it. It's just. I don't know. It's how many staff members do you need to get a job done? That's another thing. I don't know. Bill, yeah, it's over. I mean, I thought it was over right after the Miami game. I think a lot of people did, but yeah, I think it's over. They go to Mississippi State next week. I don't know how the hell what the team's mindset's going to be heading into Starkville next week. I think Mississippi State's probably going to be a pretty fired up. Their first conference game at Davis Wade with Jeff Lebby. They're going to have a lot to play for. I don't really know what the mindset of this Florida team is. I don't know what that opening line is.
It's also an offense that can strike through the air.
Correct.
And that's another thing that is going just to give you a little bit more hope if you are the Bulldogs, especially because of the way that the tackling was today. The offensive line is abysmal for Florida. It is absolutely almost unwatchable. You had the one big run by Montrell Johnson in the first game against Miami. That's the only thing that I have seen that gives me a sign of hope. I'm not going to sit here and say that not having Trey Wilson did hurt your stats. Here was something that I really didn't like. I hated the way that Billy orchestrated the quarterbacks. He
put the third string kid in at the end. I was following some Florida people, and that kind of just pissed them off even more. It was like the walk-on.
I could not stomach the way that it went from Graham Mertz to DJ Lagway back to Graham Mertz. It just felt like the way that you want to rotate quarterbacks, I completely understand seeing both them play. It made sense. Right now, you saw what DJ Lagway did last week against a high school team. You saw that Graham Mertz last year had the highest completion percentage in college football. But you don't rotate. Basically, what you're doing is you're not letting either one of them get comfortable running against that first-team defense because you're switching them in and out. It didn't seem like it was a cohesive game plan. They don't carry that same momentum. It wasn't good. It was awful. And in my opinion, that ultimately set them behind the sticks before we even saw the second quarter begin. The second that we came out of the rain delay, the hour rain delay, and you saw Lagway take the field, I thought, boom, you're going back to Lagway. You're sticking with Lagway at this point. Eight passing yards, one completion. That's it. No, now we're switching. Now we're going back to Mertz. And
Cole,
then
what are you doing next week if Cole Thompson is the head coach at Thompson Tech with this situation? You going with Mertz? You going with Lagway?
I'm playing Mertz until he gives me a reason not to play.
I agree. I think Lagway didn't do anything today to make me be like, yep, that's our guy on the road in a place that gets really loud at Mississippi State, the first SEC game. I'm with you. You still got to. If you're Florida, if we're talking real in depth about their team outside of the super obvious, yeah, Mertz is still the starter.
Let's also talk about just a couple of the minor miscues that kind of piss me off. And this is where the discipline comes in, that I'm just not seeing the direction underneath Billy. The Montrell Johnson, the Elijah Badger touchdown. So the Elijah Badger first touchdown, that was like a 67-yarder, good swing pass, like it bobbled in the air. He caught it, readjusted, and Montrell Johnson's down the field with an offensive penalty holding. You constantly see yourself shooting you in the foot. Yes, Mertz threw a pick. It was a very egregious pick. It was disgusting. But also, how many times did you watch as this offense just never seemed to get in rhythm because of how many careless penalties there were?
A ton. I mean, really for both teams. I think it was close to like 20 combined penalties for both of them.
It was terrible. And
Yeah.
I think the worst part is that, again, the writing is on the wall at this point. Lagway is not playing extremely well against an A&M team, which, again, it's Mike Elko defense. I'm going to give credit where credit's due. Mike Elko is the czar of defensive line. You finally saw that next direction. A&M wasn't perfect. A&M has a ton of questions that they have to go ahead and fix, especially in that fourth quarter. They let it just linger a little bit too late, but at the same time, you never felt like the game was in jeopardy. You don't want to do that against an Arkansas. You don't want to do that against a South Carolina that you just saw play at Willie B. And guess where you're going this year? It's definitely going to be one of those things. So there's things that are correctable, but at the end of the day, it's year one for Mike Elko. You will allow sloppy play in a win simply because of you're establishing your culture with your guys. It's year three for Billy Napier, and it's not getting any better. Cole S., what does this game do for you on the outlook of A&M? I think right now it depends on what do we see from Connor Wigman if he does start.
Yeah, it's tough to go with right now.
And then also, what do you do if he is the starter and it's not looking better? You turn to Marcel Reed and he has just one lightning in a bottle game, or this is what we're going to get moving forward. Because I like Le'Veon Moss. I think Le'Veon Moss as your lead back gives you a ton of gusto. I also really do like Amari Daniels as a complimentary piece. I think that EJ Smith also adds value. I really do. I think Cyrus Allen finally came on the way you want to see it.
We still don't really know who the number one receiver. Granted, they didn't really give themselves much of a shot today to do that. It wasn't like they were going around slinging the rock. I mean, they threw the football, 17 times, so there wasn't a lot of chances to disperse it. So that's still up in the air, I think. But again, the passing game will probably depend on if it's Wigman or Reed. It's going to be a little different.
But you did see couple times, Noah Thomas have some good plays, especially last week. You did see Jabray Barber come back. You did see Moose Muhammad out there for a 20-yard gain. Cyrus Allen played well. So it's one of those things where the defense, I didn't worry about it after week one. I figured it would take a few weeks to get there. I didn't think it was going to be at this level today. It is. So this is the version that you're going to get the defensive line moving forward with Cassius Howell, Shamar Turner, Shamar Stewart, Nick Scorton. The linebacking play plays extremely well. The secondary plays extremely physical. If you get that, I think 9 wins is possible. I'm not going to bet on it because if I can also see A&M just not finding a rhythm offensively because they don't have what you want. But at the same time, I do feel like that this is a team that showed me enough with Marcel Reed as your quarterback to believe that there is something there that you may not have with Wigman. That's not to say, and again, I'm making this clear so that way words are not taken out of context. That way nobody cuts this up and says, Cole Thompson think that this is no. Connor Wigman, I believe, is a great quarterback, and I believe that he will find success. I don't know if it will be at Texas A&M if Colin Klein is the offensive coordinator. I also believe that while you do have Marcel Reed, and there are some question marks to his overall style of play, Marcel Reed is a better fit for what Colin Klein wants to do. And I think that you noticed that through the first 3 quarters about how consistent this offense could be.
Correct. Both things can be true. Like you said, Connor Wigman could go fit right into a quarterback-friendly system that likes like sling it around, maybe go off the RPOs a little bit, and he'd fit right into that. And he said Marcel Reed can fit better in Colin Klein's system. It'll be interesting. It'll be a good week, fun week of practice. I'll be excited to watch Mike Elko's press conference as always. He'll get a lot of questions about this. This will be a topic going into it because you would hope they beat Bowling Green again. Not a game you just roll the balls out because Bowling Green played well against Penn State a couple weeks ago. But then you get Arkansas, you get Missouri at home. We're going to really know a ton about A&M after those games. And if they were to win both, they're setting themselves up pretty well because they get LSU at home. Who else do they still? They obviously still got Texas in the year. They still got
Auburn at the end of the year. So
A&M still got a bunch of toss-ups.
But the good news is that right now I feel like that the way the defense played today, the way that you saw some inconsistencies with South Carolina, the way you saw some inconsistencies with LSU, the way that you saw Auburn play last week, the way that you saw Arkansas play. I mean, they went down to the wire with UAB after giving the game up to Oklahoma State. There's enough to where you say, okay, winnable game. Right now, the way I view Texas A&M, with the offense I saw today and with the defense that could continue to get better, every game is a coin flip. If you have some consistency, you're going to get a win over Oklahoma. I mean, you're going to get a win over South Carolina. If you don't, you're going to lose. You're going to get a win over Arkansas. If you start to have some big-time mistakes with interceptions or ball get coughed up on the ground or you allow an explosive play, you lose. But you're in every game. Right now, when I'm looking at Texas A&M, the way that we saw them play for 3 quarters before the fourth, that's a team to where if they play that version of football, it's going to come down to, does the other team make mental mistakes to give you a win, or can you capitalize on those mental mistakes and get that win? That was the way I felt about Texas A&M by the end of the day.
Yeah, no, great point. This will be a game. Mike Elko, somebody asked Cole. He asked us what we thought this meant to A&M season. Again, I'm a Cole. It's a lot of talk. But I'd say right now, Texas is probably the only game where I'm like, yeah, I'd be a little surprised if Texas A&M won that one. And again, that's at home. Time can change that. But I would say
it's also a rivalry.
I would say from a Mike Elko standpoint, you're always going to be able to put this. Is kind of like you're in your trophy case for year one. Like you said, it's going to be a notch on your belt for year one. Oh, yeah, I only won 8 games this year, which I think most fans would be realistic with. But I also ended the conference losing streak. Like, that's something that you're like, all right, that's a realistic goal you wanted to check off the box in year one. You know what? You did it. Dave, before we get on out of here, what is the last game for Billy Napier for you at this point? The last game? The last game for Billy Napier. I'm going to go. Give me pulling up the schedule. I know off the top of my head, but I want to. I'll lock mine in then. I think it's triggers, and then I'm. If he loses to UCF, he won't be there for 10. That's what I wanted. I was going to say UCF, but I just wanted to make sure. I was like, yeah, I'm probably going to say UCF here because that's the one you lose to another in-state team, and it's embarrassing. You're just a loss in general. That'll be your second straight loss to a UCF as well. You're right. At Mississippi State, then UCF, and UCF has a big one tonight against TCU, and UCF can just be better than Florida. So I'm with you. The UCF one, they usually don't fire guys until after in the middle of bye weeks, as you know, Cole. But I think that one would do it in, and I think Florida would probably be going to Knoxville with an interim coach. You're not going into Knoxville with Billy Napier if you lose to UCF. I don't see that happening. I don't think it can happen because of also the way that you have lost these first 2 games. You've lost the grace to be able to have it work. I don't know what's going to happen in the future for Florida. I will say this to all the Gators fans that are watching or will watch this later on. I'm tired of seeing you guys go and say, we'll settle for an up-and-comer, a rising star, somebody from the G5 level. You're Florida. You're better than this. If you are going to make a hire, you need to start swinging. You don't need to settle. You need to understand you are Florida. This is the Gators. This is the swamp. This is an atmosphere where literally the fourth quarter song is "We Won't Back Down." And I'm warning you this. Florida needs some swag back. You need to not back down when you go look for your next head coach. But like, rate, review, subscribe. Let us know in the comments section. What were your overall thoughts from Florida's performance, from A&M's performance? What direction do both these teams go moving into week 4? Make sure that also you're following us on social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Follow Dave on Twitter at Mach10 Sports, me on Twitter at Mr. Cole Thompson. Download the podcast version of the show. Check out all of our great work at SECUnfiltered.com. And of course, hit subscribe. We're your number one source for all things SEC. For Dave Shumate, I'm Cole Thompson. We will be back for the postgame show, Kentucky versus Georgia. But until then, Gator Nation, Aggie Pride. Later.